I'm not meant to pass time. I'm here for a purpose, and I need to step into that.
We've got chaos, but it's okay. I still live harmonically in that chaos.
I like to shut everyone out and remember who I am.
Logic, governance, and all of those things are actually necessary, but it's not actually meaning that everything is actually done straight down the line.
I move wherever I want to move, and I'm not staying in a lane.
To me, balance is rigorous. It actually brings tension to try and actually get that balance.
This is Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. I'm Kathy DeMarcos. Let's explore what it means to lead, live, and listen with intention.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. And today you are absolutely going to love our guest. She's probably one of the most favourite people that I have on this planet, and you're going to see why. So please actually join me in welcoming Bianca. Now, I'm going to say this wrong. I should have asked. It is Stawiarski?
Stawiarski or Stawiarski. It depends on whether you're Australian or not.
Bianca's actually the founder of Warida Wholistic Wellness. She's actually a proud Badamaya and Ukrainian woman. She's a healer and a change maker. Bianca's work actually bridges Indigenous wisdom and conscious leadership. She empowers others to heal, to listen deeply, and to reconnect with their inner strength through cultural, emotional, and spiritual balance. And now you know why I love her. So welcome, Bianca.
Thank you, Brani Mata. It was interesting as you were talking, a whole flock of birds just flew past, chattering away, and I went, there's country yarning.
All of those things that we don't generally actually pay attention to, right? And yet there's signals all around us.
Yeah, and sometimes, I'll walk into the paddock by Gammy Winda, which is the grandmother tree, and there'll be a sulphur-crested cockatoo squawking at me, and I'll be turning around going, yes, I know, I have to pay attention. It's like the birds going, wake up, time to get moving.
Yep. And you're right. It's the little things that we keep getting those little nuggets of messages from, and yet we're just so busy, just being busy for the sake of being busy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Busy for the sake of being busy, absolutely. And sometimes we forget to listen until something happens where the universe, ancestors, whatever you want to call that experience, reminds us that if we just listened earlier, we wouldn't be hit across the head with a brick.
Yeah, exactly right. And then the question wouldn't be, why did that happen to me? And it's like, no, it didn't happen to you. It actually happened for you because you weren't paying attention.
Yes, wow. Do you know, but it's not just, I know we're completely going off track, but we're not really. If that hadn't have happened, then I wouldn't have moved back to Adelaide, then I wouldn't have separated from I probably would have separated from my husband, and then I wouldn't have started my business, and then I wouldn't have been able to help all these people internationally, and then I wouldn't have started my PhD. So all of these things become this sort of domino, and maybe if I had listened a little bit earlier, it wouldn't have been as extreme. But, I'm stubborn like that.
Yeah. It's interesting because what you've actually just shared is understanding the cost of not doing something. And we never measure that because we don't look at that. All that we do is we measure only the cost of what something physically is for us without recognizing there may have actually been a greater cost.
Yeah. I just think about all the change, the people, everything that I would not have come in contact with, the work that I wouldn't have been able to do or wouldn't have had that mindset to do.
Yeah.
all of that would have been gone. Maybe it may have eventuated, but I just think it was the right thing at the right time, at
Yeah.
the impetus to get me moving and be very driven in what I was doing. I was in a holding pattern. I was passing time, and I don't think any of us, but definitely not me. I'm not meant to pass time. I'm here for a purpose, and I need to step into that, which is what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I'm going to ask you the first thing that I guess that we're talking about, which is consciousness. So what's consciousness to you, Bianca?
Oh, I'll probably use some Buddy Meyer words because for me, I think it's a beautiful way of explaining. I think consciousness is deeply connected to Ngāti Gawanda, which is thinking, listening, feeling strongly. Other people might call it deep listening. I think it is that listening with your heart and also understanding your interconnection with everything. So often people say to me that they feel quite alone or things like that. And I'm going, but have a look. We think we're apart from country or the environment or the land or whatever you call it, but we're actually deeply connected part of a whole. And I see consciousness as beyond what we can see and hear and feel and think. It's how everything's interconnected and how we are part of everything. And it's those messages that you get. It is the things that people may rationalize out as something not real.
Yeah.
It's the ability to be able to talk to Gammy-Winda, the grandmother tree, and hear those messages and actually know that that was the right thing for that person at that time. So I guess for me, consciousness is actually connection, interconnection with everything living, and we always say in Buddy Mai, in Aboriginal way, we always say, the rocks have spirits, the trees have spirits, and things like that. So it's the interconnection with everything. And circular, not beginning and end. It's not like ancestrally. It's everything's happening right now, right here. This beautiful elder said to me, because I had said, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's related to your question. This beautiful elder said to me when I said, I felt like I couldn't do anything on this country that I live in because on Ghana country in South Australia, because this is not my ancestral country, my Indigenous country. I'm from Western Australia, even though I was born here. And she said to me, maybe your ancestors brought you here and our ancestors called you here. And so you're exactly where you need to be.
Oh, how beautiful.
Mm.
Isn't that just gorgeous? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that when people, you're surrounded with such sort of wisdom, that it's not just a linear, response or, experience. They genuinely actually speak from the heart, it's almost like a different language, isn't it?
That's Ngāti Gawanda.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess one of the things, we're all operating at such a different level. What do you think is one of the challenges that we face as conscious leaders, and maybe what you've actually faced both personally and professionally?
It's that constant pull between living in a Western capitalist world and wanting to shut yourself off and be a hermit and being intimately connected to where you are. And for me, that's the battle. It's the operating a business that then needs to be financially viable, because you need to do all those adulting things, all those paying taxes and all that kind of stuff. But we are deeply spiritual, whether we're aware about it or not. And there's this incongruence with us as a spiritual being and us as a being that moves in the world. And it's how we can bring both of those together without without losing the spiritual side. I think for me, that's the biggest thing. You know, as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
there's that constant pull. Whereas I just want to sit on country and listen to the birds and watch the warridas flying, the wedge-tailed eagles, and listening to the trees and the deep knowledge that's here in this ground, in this earth. But at some point I have to go out and make money and survive and do those kinds of things. And it's that non-valuing
Yeah.
of that spiritual conscious being and just the
Mm.
simple things like empathy, intuition, none of those things are really valued in the capitalist world that we have to
Yeah.
move within.
I think that you've hit the nail on the head, because that's probably my greatest challenge as well, especially, in the circles of where I've come from, which is the financial sector,
Mm.
that, the rigor of the compliance, all of the legalities, the system. And I guess both you and I actually sit in the same place, as in where we operate from a social enterprise perspective. And so there is that
Absolutely.
combination of, operating for the collective. And so, the more that we actually generate, then it gives us the ability to do more within community. Right?
Yes. But at the same time, I'll use another buddy of my word, ngalama yugija, we give to each other. That's that
Yeah.
reciprocity. I
Yeah.
probably give away 70 or 80% of my work purely because I see a need and want to help out. But at some point I need to make sure that I'm financially viable to be able to, continue to operate and give away my services. So as social enterprises, I mean, really it's how Aboriginal businesses have always operated.
Mm.
Aboriginal communities have always operated from that sharing, that reciprocity, all of those things. And so I would never have started a business any other way, because that's the way,
Yeah.
that's how I'm hardwired. I'm also hardwired from the Ukrainian side, which is that sense of community and of ceremony with, harvest and all of those kinds of things, which then build into that. So it's this beautiful connection here on who I am and why I have these views. Yeah, I think.
Oh. One of the things, I guess, in looking at that is we then actually engage, partner, collaborate with people that are, I'm going to say, really holding on to logic, and being able to justify everything. How are you actually navigating through that when you're having to deal with leaders and colleagues that are really in need of having that to be able to ensure that risk is minimized?
Yeah. I guess
Mhm.
part of my approach is relational. I've got over 2 decades experience working in the Commonwealth government. So dotting I's and crossing T's is, documenting paperwork, that kind of stuff is ingrained in me. But I always take that other step of relational connection.
Yeah.
And quite often that approach that others are taking is a mask. They're standing behind that policy and procedures. Policies and procedures are very important, don't get me wrong. They're standing behind that and they're forgetting their humanness. And it's quite often where I just sit down and remind them who they are. And that's the difference, because then suddenly people, they either switch or they go, oh, she's just a bit weird, and leave me at that. And that's perfectly fine, because I'm comfortable in who I am and the way I do things. So yes, have to be accountable, have to be ethical. I mean, that's just part of the way I operate. And long term, you won't be sustainable if you don't have those things. It'll eat away at you at some space. So I think that sort of It's about recognizing that we can be both. We can be leaders who meet all the legal requirements of being a director, the legal requirements of running a business, but we can also lead from the heart and recognize that we can actually do things differently all at the same time. I'm a person, when people say stay in your lane,
Yeah.
and at that point I usually swear, but I won't today. I usually go stuff the lane, but in slightly more colourful language. Stuff the lane and let's pull down those barriers enough. I move wherever I want to move, and I'm not staying in a lane. I'm not staying there. I'm doing whatever I want to do and feel moved to do without impacting others.
Yeah.
They can do whatever they want to do. But for me, it is how you walk through life. And that ends up rubbing off on people. I
Yeah.
think that leaders start to then look at and go, before you even know, you're like a virus infecting them. And then they
Yes.
might think a little differently.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think what you're actually talking about in many ways is your presence. There's congruency, and it's not actually about not appreciating, that logic, governance, and all of those things are actually necessary, but it's not actually meaning that everything is actually done straight down the line, that there are other variables. And those other variables may not always actually come with a tick the box, right?
Oh, yes. Some of them require you to feel. They require you to
Yeah.
suspend your logic brain and really sit back in that heart-centered heart space. There is, social enterprises, when you think about it, in a capitalist society are not logical,
Yeah.
but they fill us and they show our obligations to community.
Yeah. It's interesting. Some of the work that I actually do is actually working with large corporates, financial institutions, which are there in general for the shareholders. However, having discussions, as you say, on a personal note, building that relationship and getting people, on the board at chair level to actually understand that by contributing to community and enhancing the lives of community, you are actually enriching the entire community as a whole. And guess what? Your shareholders will actually also appreciate that. But it's about understanding what you're doing and delivering that message as opposed to, just the traditional way that we communicate. That's that relationship building, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. I co-founded a charity, a national charity, Indigenous-led charity, of course, called Bella Empower. And
Right.
it was that principle. We didn't want lots of staff. What we actually wanted was all the small Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander private practices, mental health private practices around Australia are all too small to tender for these big jobs, but what they're doing is really transformational. And so we wanted to create this umbrella where everyone ran their own business and we pay the majority of the fee to the clinicians, to that business. We're raising the economic empowerment of First Nations peoples and communities around Australia just by making sure that there's a pathway for that, a referral pathway for work, and they're paid appropriately. And so for us, that's a no-brainer. It's all about how do the small people now come together as a cohort without losing their identity and leading from the heart, very heart-centered. And we call all of our clinicians family, even though they're independent contractors running their own businesses. And people don't lose their identity. I think that's the important part. So, it's kind of raising that. We know Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses are more likely to employ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We know that they're more likely to purchase things within their community, and that raises economic empowerment.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I did something like that on a project in Tanzania, working with female-owned farmers out in a remote area. So did the same, set up
Mm.
a co-op and actually then, did some training from a collective perspective in respect to the economic security piece. But I also then brought the buyer back to the table to renegotiate terms because they're actually now operating with one larger entity, right?
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely. Gives
security
them
on many
power.
levels. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
pushback power. I've seen the same thing. We've
Yeah,
had government departments saying, "Well, I think your rates are a little bit high." And I've pushed back and I've gone, "Actually, you're getting a specialist service." And then there are rates. If that means that we lose that contract,
yeah,
that's how it goes. And in the end, they've said yes. But that requires a collaborative or a larger organisation to be able to push back on that. If you're individual small ones, like in the situation that you gave as well,
yeah,
each of those small micro farmers wouldn't have been able to push back like that. But now you go, actually, we've now got a collaborative here,
yeah,
and so that's community.
yeah,
That's actually building on the strength without someone overall coming in and going, "Oh, no, it has to be done this way."
yeah. It's interesting. I mean, you held your ground there. What I actually look at in hearing that is there wasn't that actual foresight from the government to actually say long term, there's actually economic benefit all around in this. And so, therefore, what actually appears as the cost up front is, in fact, saving us down the track. They're the things that, we were talking about earlier. That's what people actually overlook. So, it's being able to have that sort of discussion to bring that level of awareness to the table, right? It's fascinating.
And I'm finding more and more people are looking for that relational
Mm.
connection in a therapeutic space. And we are the masters of relational connection. And I think that really services could learn a lot from the way we're operating.
It's interesting. Sometimes that barrier that, I suspect you have faced as I have, because it's different, it doesn't even get a look in.
Oh, yeah.
It fascinates me that we're actually so rigid in, our actual policies that we write or in our actual perception or understanding of business or in community or even about, how to actually build that economic security that actually has a win-win-win for everybody involved as opposed
Yeah.
to
Or
just one.
we'll just fund the same organisations over
Yes.
and over again without looking, actually, all you're doing is growing an organisation bigger, but you're actually not sharing that out across incredibly diverse, skilled, amazing business owners
Yeah.
or whatever. And you've got a few that are doing very well, and then everybody else is struggling. Not
Yeah.
many in that sort of middle area. And I think that that is the key that we need to start thinking about.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that you mentioned earlier was actually in respect to we need to actually ensure that businesses are viable. A social enterprise doesn't mean that it's not viable. It actually means that it is a viable business, but it's actually got a commitment to doing good. And so therefore, it's contributing to the greater community. Whereas what actually happens with for-profit, just as much as I guess, the other sectors, but they actually start off not necessarily actually thinking about the bigger picture and the collective, but they aren't profitable. The number of small businesses that actually start, and I would say operate like a hobby
Mm.
because they're not paying themselves. They don't even think about paying themselves right from the onset. That then actually becomes a dissolved business down the track. But if
Mm.
we operated like the way that we're just talking about, it means we're actually doing things collectively and there's somebody else to bounce off because entrepreneurship is actually lonely a lot of the time,
Yes, it
right?
is. Yeah. And there's also, I know in my own entrepreneurial journey, I've gone from, when you first start, No one's profitable. Well, I'm not. And then I earned really well. I was paying myself well and all that great stuff. And then seasons change. And then for me, I started my PhD. That financially impacted my business
Yeah.
a crazy amount. It is not smart business sense for me to do a PhD. It is just not. But what I'm doing is I'm holding out and I'm recognizing that this is a
Yeah.
few years of time where it is not profitable, but I can carry that because I've got other things in place. And then as soon as my PhD's finished, then I can ramp everything back up again and get it
Yeah.
all moving and knowing that what my PhD, I hope, will give back to community is far exceeds what I could do in those few years in my business. So yeah, and this is this journey, isn't it? It's the journey from the entrepreneurial journey,
Yeah.
feast, famine, then, few years of fantastic, everything's going great, and then you make a choice that impacts. Yeah.
The difference is that you had choice. And that's, I think, what we both actually work towards, giving people the freedom of choice, and being able to do that, particularly, on a conscious level. It's not
Mm.
about just the optics. We're actually doing it purely from the soul. And I don't know that everybody quite understands that, so for me, one of the things is that I'm okay to say no to a lot of work if there isn't congruency and if it's just about lining another person's pocket, again, that's already got a very full pocket. It's easy for me to say no.
Mm.
It's the same, right, for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
There are jobs that I've gone, I have no interest in doing that. Anyone can do that. I think that would be boring for me for a start, but it's not where I'm trying to get to. It's not why I'm doing this. And so what I'll do is I'll refer on. I say, look, I could do this, but I actually think this person would be better
Mm.
placed to do that
Yeah.
role for you, that consultancy role or whatever. And I think that works really well. Or you charge corporates who have lots of money, a reasonable amount, so then you can offset that with all the social enterprise work that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the things, Bianca, that you've been able to, I guess, put in as part of your daily practice to ensure that you stay conscious and ethical?
You know, part of what I do, you can't see it, but just on that side, my windows are wide open.
Right.
So the whole time I'm here, this sounds like a basic thing, but I'm listening to the birds. So I'm
Yeah.
upstairs in the trees and I'm listening to the birds. And so every now and then a sound will pull me back and I'll just go, or I'll see a little blue wren hopping across the window. That brings me back. I also, lots and lots of plants is another thing because I didn't just want to be in a space that is an office. I'm looking out over the valley through the trees.
How beautiful.
It's those tiny little moments that bring us back to who we are. As I explained before we started the yarn today, my son and I are doing this, my adult son and I are doing this course where every day we spend time reflecting on our internal world and our external world and thinking about the thinking patterns about who we are and what's going on. And so I guess that's part of it. It's the stopping, it's the thinking. I try and have lots of reflection time. I start my day at 4:30 in the morning. I know that sounds crazy, but it's how I wake up. I just wake up. There's no set time. And I spend the morning reflecting. I sit in bed with a cup of tea and reflect on life and listen to the night birds going to sleep and the morning birds waking up. Those things are all very much about conscious living. That's the stuff that I'm always reflecting on that. And how do I feel? How do I feel when I'm doing something? Does it
Mm.
does it enrich me or does it take away? And you know what? I externally outsource the things that I have zero interest in and try and spend the time in that heart-centered space. So I guess that's probably there's some very simple things that are what it's all about for me. And, and when I'm on Zoom, I can see these plants.
Yeah.
When the breeze blows, I can see them moving, and so do other people. Yeah, I'm looking at what is that? A little dog behind you.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
sweet. Oh my gosh, so tiny.
I've got another one on the floor.
But yeah, see, so coming into other people's worlds,
Yeah.
and and that sounds really simple. There's two things I have. I keep looking up here. There's two things I have above my desk. Well, actually, I've got a million things above my desk, but there's two things that I have above my desk. This one's the first one.
Yeah.
Because we can live in a spiritual world all the time, and that's fabulous. But at some point, you do need to get shit
Land.
done, right? And then the other one is a lovely lady I met, and these. And so even if I don't open them,
Yeah.
I see that. And both of these things just make me stop and think, am I sitting more in this one or could I spend some time in this one? This reflection time. And so I guess that's that conscious living. It's also I nourish myself. Like I feed myself beautiful food.
Yeah.
And I started on the encouragement of my son. I started with one of these things, the whoops. My focus is on sleep, on making sure that I'm caring for myself so then I can care for others. Because if you don't do either, then it's not going to work. So I guess there's a few simple things that remind me of who I am, but always listening for the birds, like listening for the reminders.
The little messages that they're going to drop in for you.
And absolutely. I said, and these two things, every day I look up and I go, okay, am I getting shit done or am I living consciously?
Yeah.
This is the incongruence as an entrepreneur, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, we've got to get stuff done. That's what we're actually here to I'm going to say to do, but that's the doing part. The reality
be.
though is to be, right?
Mm.
And it's such a significant difference, but it's also probably the one thing that gets people stuck. What do you mean you're here to be, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean? It's interesting sometimes, and I suspect you're the same, but I can sit in a room and I'll actually energetically be able to tap in to where everybody's sitting and the nuances in the breath change. I'll actually see when it occurs and what that actually does. And people just look at me and say, but how do you do that? And yet that is, in fact, being intentionally conscious.
Mm. And I also find for me, I need to have enough sanctuary time. I call this my sanctuary. I live on a farm. I call this my sanctuary. I get exhausted with peopling. Like after all day chatting to people and working with people and as a therapist helping people, supporting them on their healing journeys, I like to shut everyone out. and remember who I am. And if that is just watching something trashy on TV, then that's what I need. But I always have my windows open. So the night birds for me are super important, and the frogs at certain times of year, the frogs just singing, and that's my restoration. Is if I leave people, that's great, and I love people, but I also need I need daily quiet time, so then I can recenter, ground, reflect, and see how I'm moving through the world.
So I do something very similar to you. I'm an early riser. So I'm up between 4:30 and 5 daily. And it doesn't matter which continent I'm in. The clock
Yes,
automatically
it
adjusts,
just seems
right?
to change.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's none of this jet lag. And I actually put scheduled blocks in my day just to breathe. Because like you, I'm actually in front of a screen or in front of people all the time. But actually just having that solitude to just breathe and actually feel within me is so important. People have actually said, oh, so is that how you actually find balance? And this is something I'd love your thoughts on. We use that word so loosely, I don't actually know that it has the meaning anymore. Uh, so I say to people, no, I don't actually live in balance, because to me, balance is rigorous. It actually brings tension to try and actually get that balance, like the scales. I live in harmony, and that may mean,
Yeah.
right? We've got chaos, but it's okay. I still live harmonically in that chaos, right?
So I listen to my body as well. The moment I start to get a little foggy, I go and have a sleep. 15
Yeah,
minutes. I'm out. I always build in, I've got time between people and never do back to back. And so sometimes just need a 15-minute sleep, and then my brain is back awake.
yeah,
So it might be reflection, or it's just to lie down, I completely shut off, fall asleep, and wake back up. For me, I love what I do every single day. How many people get to get up and go, yes? I look at my calendar the night before, I go, okay, what time am I starting? All
yeah,
right, got that in my head. And then I just love it. I get to work with so many different people and
yeah,
in so many different parts of the world. And I just kind of go, when people go, oh, it's Friday, I'm looking forward to Friday. I'm going, I work 7 days a week, but I build into that time.
yeah,
If my daughter is home and she wants to go and have lunch out, and I don't have bookings at that time, I'll go out to lunch with her.
yeah,
Or if my son wants to sit down and do a spiritual lesson, we sit down and do that.
yeah,
Or sit on the balcony, swinging in the hammock, listening to the birds while I'm having a read or another snooze, you know, but
yeah,
I love what I do. And so if you love that, then you never go, oh, it's Monday.
yes,
You just go, wow, guess what I get to do? People always
yeah,
say, and I look at your travel, people always say to me, wow, what part of the world are you in now? And I just go, what an opportunity. I get to meet all these people. I get to see these beautiful countries and see the different way that they're operating. Years ago, I went to Ethiopia as part of the Social Enterprise World Forum and got to travel around and see the incredible things that people are doing in their communities. That stuff drives me.
yeah,
That's the stuff that fills your heart. Even though I did work for over 20 years in an office, this wasn't who I was.
no, no,
And now I just think about all the change that I could make in the world, or how maybe my different perspective might just make someone else think about something. I think that's the great thing. When you love what you do, there's that whole talking. When you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
yeah,
Yes, there are some tedious, boring things about what I do. Answering emails, which is the next thing that I'm going to offset, outsourced. But, answering emails is something that doesn't fulfill me or drive me, but connecting with people, sharing and learning and understanding, that's the conscious part, but also being very aware. What is my body telling me? What do I need? And how, if I don't do this, can I fully show up for somebody else? And the answer is you can't. And so, I said I build those nano naps. They're just in there. The moment I start to get a bit foggy.
You and I have got so many similarities, it's ridiculous. I think, the second that we actually connected, there was just this incredible synchronicity. I think it was a half an hour discussion. We went for 3 hours, didn't we? Or
Oh, I
something
know.
like that.
It was amazing, and we were just blah, 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 and just every little thing was and isn't that the beauty?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of relational connection when you meet someone that you intuitively know who they are and what they're about and the gifts that they're bringing to the world. And I think that's the really cool thing. And, majority of the day I'm walking around with no shoes on. I'm looking tidy today. That's only because I actually have to go somewhere this afternoon. But it's more about the work. It's about the connection. And when I say work, I mean, I'm not talking about working for somebody else. It's that business of, Annie Judy Atkinson talks about burning your own wood. It's the doing your own work, understanding who you are.
Yes.
And also the other thing that I do is I've got a beautiful clinical supervisor who looks at the whole body. And so every month for an hour and a half, I reflect on how I'm thinking and feeling and maybe some decisions I've made. And so I have that external reference as well.
Yeah, something that it's interesting. I mean, under, clinical supervision circumstances, so when you are counselling, when you are actually in that space, it's, we do have that compliance built in for supervision, and yet in the world of coaching, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I think how fascinating it is, just that small nuance, which I would actually see intertwine, doesn't actually provide for that space for you to actually sit in a place of supervision, to have self-reflection from an external source, because we all know that when we actually self-reflect, we can justify everything, right? So
when you have to verbalize it and have someone else reflect that back to you, and you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'm, why do you think like that? Well, actually, that's a very curious way to think about things. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I just go, I think I'm a better mother. I'm a better friend. I'm a better counselor and coach.
Yeah.
I'm also just a better human. When you have that time, because there's some places where you feel like you can be, completely warts and all, just dumping it out there. And I think that's super important. That's, hundreds of years ago, we had beautiful communities. We didn't have the issue of, and I'm not romanticizing this, we didn't have the issue of isolation and loneliness as much because communities came together.
Yeah.
We knew our neighbours' names, and we knew celebrated when their children got married and things like that. And that's this sort of more modern way of living has removed that to some extent. I'm lucky in the farming community. Everybody knows everybody, and we still have that to some extent. But in the city areas, I know that's becoming more and more an issue.
Yeah.
But that's part of conscious living. How do we move? How do we move in community? How do we continue to show up when we're hurting? All of those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's interesting. You will experience this too, but, when you look at connecting and connecting deeply, it doesn't matter where you are. So my actual network is right across the globe, and it is still at our fingertips, right? So it's not about where you're situated. It's actually how you are in life that actually connects people.
Absolutely. And it's also those people that you make an impact on that you don't realise quite how profound. I was presenting at a trauma and something conference years ago, and this woman was in the audience and reached out to me afterwards. And about every year, she'll just reach out and have a chat. And you just don't realise how much the way you come across can really have a transformational impact on somebody and their journey in the world. And they could go, and then that curiosity, what was that about? Maybe I could think about not being Bianca or being that person, but actually maybe I could think about, what does that mean for me?
Yeah, exactly.
And you have this impact and you just don't realise that you have this impact. And it's humbling, and it reminds you, or reminds me, to try and show up and be my best self every day, no matter how I'm feeling, but being authentic about if I'm not. And, as a counsellor, we're told to not do that, in the sense of, don't share things about you and things like that. And, I remember one day I don't know what had happened, something in an argument or something with my family, or I don't know what it was. Anyway, I was feeling really like ooky, like, not right. I wasn't grounded anymore, and, the work I do requires me to be grounded.
Yeah.
And a client was coming from an hour away, and I went, I've got 3 options here. I could say, "Don't come, I'm feeling I'm feeling off." Or I could pretend and just go, "Everything's okay." I'll pretend that I'm holding space and things like that, which a lot of people do that. Or I could be honest. So obviously I chose the latter, the honesty side. And I just said, "Look, I'm sitting in grief. I just want to let you know that I'm sitting in grief. I don't want to talk about it, but I'm still prepared to hold space for you." And the comment came back, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you told us, because we knew you were off and we thought it was us."
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
So over and over again, what we have to do is remember that others may have that sort of intuition and understanding, and recognize, especially people from trauma backgrounds, and to recognize that if you're authentic, what that does is it removes that hurdle. And that's part of conscious living. Take your
Yeah,
mask
absolutely.
off and actually be honest about how you are, because it's our humanness. It's in all our emotions. All our emotions are important and valid, and things like that. And so, just remember that at times we are in grief, and maybe we can't do that thing that we want to do because we're off, and that's okay.
Yeah, very valid point. That actual authenticity piece actually really is
Mm.
part of that conscious living. All right, so you and I can talk forever, but we do need to wrap up. And there is one thing that I guess people listening to this podcast, we want them to actually, have something to think about. So what is it that you would like to share with people, to ask them to think about as they're listening to what we've discussed today?
I think the biggest thing for me would encourage people, what's stopping you? What's holding you back from stepping into who you are? And you can blame it on every external thing out there, but what's stopping you internally from stepping into who you are? Because it's important that all of us live and walk through the world in our power, in our conscious living, in our way of being in community. So be curious about what's stopping you
Yeah.
and why. What do you gain from there and tear down the bloody lanes. Step into it and don't care what other people think. That's the important part.
Yeah. Very powerful. I love that. We know that we might actually be in a loop. We know that we may be stuck, but giving ourselves the opportunity to genuinely be curious about what is it that's holding me back is such an important question. And to be curious, to explore without fear, what am I gaining by staying? Because you may actually be gaining so much more if you don't stay.
Oh, and I'm a perfect example of that. You know,
Mm.
I would never be where I am living my very full, some would say quite crazy life, if I had have stayed where I was. And
Yeah.
I love life every single day. It is a great opportunity to live life like this. Why pass this life without fully experiencing every part of love and joy and connection and all those kinds of things? Why live life bland?
You've taken the words out of my mouth because just like you've said, I love what I do. I love what I do, right?
100%.
Well, Bianca, it has been such a joy. Thank you so much for actually taking the time out to actually be here and to be part of this podcast. We will certainly have to catch up again, but
Absolutely.
for here and
thank
now,
you, and I hope everyone enjoys the yarn and if they just take one thing, it's step into your power.
yeah,
Stop living life half.
yeah. Thank you.
This was Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. Stay awake, lead with heart, be bold enough to listen deeply. I'm Kathy DeMarcos. Until next time, be the impact.